Victor Lockhart paced the polished hardwood floor of his study, checking his Patek Philippe for the third time in as many minutes. 6 hours until his only daughter Zoe's wedding to pharmaceutical heir Damon Wilson. Everything should have been perfect. The exclusive estate booked 2 years in advance. The guest list meticulously curated. The weather forecast promising clear skies after weeks of rain. But something felt off. Victor had built his security consulting firm from the ground up over 30 years, developing a reputation for ruthless efficiency and an uncanny ability to detect deception. Those same instincts now prickled at the back of his neck. His wife of 28 years, Mary Ann, had been acting strange for months, disappearing for hours with vague explanations, password protecting her devices, taking calls in hushed tones on the veranda. Just wedding stress, Miles' diary had suggested over whiskey last week. Victor's oldest friend knew better than to push when Victor's eyes hardened like that. Miles didn't understand. The Lockharts' marriage had weathered Hurricane Nathan that destroyed their first home, Zoe's teenage rebellion phase, and the deaths of both their parents. Mary Ann had stood beside him when competitors tried to ruin him, when a former client threatened his life, when the market crashed, and they nearly lost everything. She'd always been his rock. Until lately, Victor straightened his burgundy tie, remembering how Mary Ann had insisted on handling all the wedding arrangements personally, brushing aside his offers to help with an uncharacteristic irritability. She'd been particularly protective of the guest list, making last-minute changes without consulting him. A knock interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," Victor called, his deep voice filling the room. His son Blake entered, already dressed in his groomsman's tuxedo. At 24, he was the spitting image of Victor at that age, tall, broad-shouldered, with the same penetrating gray eyes. But where Victor exuded calculated control, Blake carried the reckless energy of youth, barely contained beneath his formal attire. "Mom said to tell you we're leaving in 30 minutes, Blake announced, adjusting his cufflinks. "She's going ahead to help Zoe get ready." Victor nodded. "Everything all right with you? You seem tense." Blake hesitated. A flash of something. Worry. Guilt? Crossing his face. "Just wedding nerves. Not mine, obviously." He forced a laugh. "I talked to Zoe this morning. She's excited, but freaking out about the usual stuff." Victor studied his son. Blake had always been a terrible liar. Another trait he'd inherited. "Is there something I should know?" "No," Blake answered too quickly. "Everything's fine. He checked his watch. "I should finish getting ready." As Blake left, Victor's phone vibrated. An unknown number. He almost declined it, but something made him answer. "Mr. Lockhart, this is Preston, your mechanic. Your wife's car will be ready this afternoon." The issue was interesting. "Maybe you'd like to come by before the wedding to discuss it." Victor frowned. "What mechanic?" "Mary Ann takes her car to the dealership." A pause. "Sorry, wrong number." The line went dead. Victor stared at his phone. Mary Ann had taken her Mercedes for service just yesterday, claiming a strange noise in the engine. She'd been insistent on handling it herself, refusing his offer to take it in. The knot of suspicion tightened in his stomach. He tried her cell. No answer. Then he called the dealership. "No, Mr. Lockhart," the service manager said after checking. "We don't have your wife's vehicle. It's not scheduled until next month's regular maintenance." Victor thanked him and hung up, his mind racing. Opening his laptop, he activated the tracker he'd installed on Mary Ann's car years ago, a security measure he'd implemented for the entire family after a business rival had once made veiled threats. He rarely checked it, respecting their privacy. The screen loaded. The Mercedes was parked at their home in the 3-car garage that Mary Ann had converted into her project space last year, complete with a new automatic door and her own private entrance from the garden. A space Victor realized, with dawning clarity, that he hadn't actually entered in months. He closed the laptop, decision made. He had 30 minutes before he needed to leave for the wedding venue. plenty of time to check the garage. Victor headed downstairs, nodding to their longtime housekeeper, Rosa, who was arranging fresh flowers in the foyer. "Mr. Victor, you look very handsome." She smiled, her warm Venezuelan accent a familiar comfort in the mounting tension. "Miss Zoe will be so happy to see you." "Thanks, Rosa. Have you seen Marianne this morning?" Rosa's smile faltered slightly. "Mrs. Lockhart left early. She took many things for the wedding." She seemed nervous. Before Victor could respond, his phone vibrated again. Another text, this time from a different unknown number. "Don't go to your daughter's wedding. Check your wife's garage." His blood turned to ice. Someone was watching him, knew his movements. His security training kicked in. He scanned the windows, checked for signs of surveillance. Nothing obvious. "Rosa, did anyone come by the house today? Any deliveries, calls?" She shook her head, eyes widening at his urgent tone. Victor moved quickly to his office, pulling up the home security system on his computer. The cameras showed nothing unusual, but he noticed the one overlooking Mary Ann's garage entrance had been repositioned to show only the garden path, not the door itself. That change would have required Mary Ann's security credentials. When had she done that? And why? His jaw clenched as he headed for the garage, keying in the code at the interior door. Access denied. She changed it. Victor stood motionless for a moment, rage building inside him. In 28 years of marriage, they had never locked doors against each other. Never. He went out through the kitchen, circling around to the garden entrance of the garage. This door had a physical key, as well as a keypad. Victor tried his copy, but it no longer worked. Another lock changed. Stepping back, he assessed his options. Breaking in would be easy enough, but the alarm would trigger, unless he pulled out his phone and opened the home system administrator controls. As the home's primary security administrator, he could temporarily override individual zone alarms. He disabled the garage sensors, then picked up a heavy stone garden ornament. One solid strike later, the side window of the garage shattered. Victor cleared the glass and reached in to unlock the garden door. The garage lights flicked on automatically as he entered. At first glance, everything seemed normal. Mary Ann's Mercedes parked in its usual spot, her workbench along one wall, storage cabinets and shelves neatly organized. Mary Ann had taken up woodworking as a hobby years ago, crafting beautiful furniture pieces for their home and as gifts. Victor moved methodically through the space. Nothing seemed out of place, until he noticed a slight depression in the concrete floor, partially hidden beneath a workbench, the outline of a trapdoor. He'd installed these himself when they built the house, secret compartments throughout the property where valuables or emergency supplies could be hidden. This one wasn't supposed to be in the garage. Kneeling, he felt along the edge until he found the recessed handle. The door lifted smoothly, revealing a small storage space below. Inside was a metal lockbox, one he didn't recognize. Victor pulled it out, noticing it wasn't locked. Inside lay several items: a burner phone, a thick envelope of cash, a passport in Mary Ann's name, but with a different surname, Palmer, her maiden name, with recent stamps from Mexico and the Cayman Islands. There were also documents. Bank statements from an offshore account holding over $2 million, and most damning of all, hotel receipts, heartfelt notes, and intimate photographs of Mary Ann with a man Victor recognized immediately, Lawrence Palmer. No relation to Mary Ann, despite the shared surname, but rather the best man at today's wedding, Damon Wilson's uncle, a man who had been a constant presence during wedding preparations, whom Mary Ann had introduced as an old family friend helping with arrangements. Victor's hands were steady as he examined each item, his face a mask of cold fury. The most recent receipt was from yesterday. The Four Seasons downtown, a day-use room. Not a one-time indiscretion, then, but an ongoing affair. In the offshore account, the passport. This wasn't just infidelity. Mary Ann was planning to leave. As he replaced the items, something caught his eye. a small velvet jewelry box tucked in a corner of the lockbox. Opening it revealed a platinum men's wedding band identical to his own, except the engraving inside read, "To Lawrence, forever yours." Victor slipped the ring into his pocket, just as his phone chimed. A calendar alert. Departure for wedding venue in 10 minutes. He carefully returned everything else to the lockbox and placed it in the hidden compartment, lowering the trapdoor back into position. Standing, he brushed off his tuxedo pants and straightened his tie, his mind crystallizing into perfect, terrible clarity. His phone buzzed again, an incoming text from the same unknown number. "Now you know. What will you do, Mr. Lockhart?" Victor drove to the wedding venue in absolute silence, his mind compartmentalizing with military precision. 20 minutes to reach Silver Lake Estate, another 10 before the ceremony would begin. 237 guests already seated in the garden, according to the coordinator's last update. His daughter in the bridal suite with her mother and bridesmaids, and Lawrence Palmer, standing beside the groom. Waiting at a red light, Victor called his personal assistant, Neil. "Sir, aren't you supposed to be at the wedding?" Neil answered on the first ring. "I need immediate background on Lawrence Palmer. Everything you can find in the next 15 minutes. Discreetly. The best man, but 15 minutes. Neil." Victor ended the call. Next, he phoned his head of security, Russell Thorne, a former Special Forces operator who now ran the protective detail for Victor's high-profile clients. "Russell, I need surveillance coverage at Silver Lake Estate. Now." "We have Phillips and Mendes on standard event security already, sir." "Not enough. I want everything. Full spectrum monitoring, all communications, every entrance and exit covered. Use the Wilson wedding as the cover, but I want eyes on Lawrence Palmer at all times." Russell, trained to respond first and question later, simply said, "On it." The grandeur of Silver Lake Estate came into view as Victor turned through the ornate gates. The colonial-style mansion sat majestically on 50 acres of immaculate grounds, the garden ceremony space visible beyond the west wing. Cars lined the circular driveway as latecomers hurried inside. Victor parked, but remained in his car, waiting. His phone buzzed with an incoming file from Neil. Lawrence Palmer's background. He scanned it quickly. 52 years old, never married. Investment banker with an impressive client list. Homes in New York and Bermuda. Connected to the Wilson family through his sister, who had married into the pharmaceutical dynasty. Clean record, stellar reputation. Too clean, perhaps. A separate notification from Russell. Teams in position. Target arrived 45 minutes ago, currently in groom's quarters with wedding party. Your wife in bridal suite with daughter. Instructions. Victor responded. Monitor only. Stand by. He took a deep breath, preparing himself for whatever would come next. His phone rang. It was Blake. "Dad, where are you?" "Mom's freaking out. The ceremony starts in 5 minutes." "I'm outside," Victor replied evenly. "Tell your mother I'll be right there." As he slipped his phone back into his pocket, his fingers brushed against the platinum wedding band. An exact replica of his own. The ultimate insult. Lawrence would have been wearing it after the wedding. A secret mockery as he stood among the family. Victor closed his eyes, making his decision. He wouldn't stop the wedding. Not yet. Zoe deserved her day. But afterward. He entered through a side door, avoiding the main procession. Russell appeared silently at his side, handing him a nearly invisible earpiece. "Channel 3 for direct communication to me," Russell murmured for Victor to hear all team updates. Victor nodded his thanks, inserting the device as he strode toward the bridal suite. Outside the door, he paused, composing himself before knocking. "Come in," Zoe called. She stood in the center of the room, a vision in white silk and lace. For a moment, Victor forgot everything else. The betrayal, the rage, the plans already forming in his mind. His little girl, grown into this beautiful woman, smiled at him with eyes so much like his own. "Dad." She rushed to him, careful not to wrinkle her dress. "I was getting worried." "Sorry, sweetheart. Last-minute business call," he lied easily. "You look perfect." Mary Ann approached from behind Zoe, resplendent in a champagne-colored gown that accentuated her still youthful figure. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Victor, finally. We were about to send out a search party." She kissed his cheek, her perfume, different from her usual scent, washing over him. He wondered if it was Lawrence's preference. "Traffic," he replied smoothly, taking her hand in his. He felt her wedding ring against his fingers and squeezed slightly, watching her face. "Everything ready?" A flicker of unease crossed her features. "Yes, all set. Lawrence has been a godsend, handling last-minute details with the caterer. Such a wonderful friend to have." "Friend." Victor maintained his pleasant expression, years of business negotiations serving him well. "Indeed. I must thank him properly." The wedding coordinator poked her head in. "It's time. Places, please." The ceremony proceeded like a beautiful dream, or nightmare, for Victor, who stood rigid beside Mary Ann in the front row, hyper-aware of Lawrence Palmer's presence on the altar. The vows, the rings, the kiss. Victor applauded mechanically, his mind elsewhere, calculating. During the reception, he circulated among guests with practiced charm, accepting congratulations, making appropriate small talk, all while watching. Mary Ann laughed too loudly with her friends, drank more champagne than usual, and kept glancing at Lawrence, who maintained a respectable distance, yet somehow always remained in her line of sight. Victor cornered the photographer during the dinner service, his tone friendly but firm. "I'd like copies of all photos immediately after the event, before editing," Victor said. The photographer, sensing something in Victor's tone, nodded quickly. "Of course, Mr. Lockhart. I can have the raw files sent to you tonight." As the evening progressed, Victor observed Blake's nervous interactions with Lawrence. Too familiar, too secretive. His son knew something, and he facilitated their meetings. Been sworn to silence. Another betrayal to address. When Zoe and Damon left for their honeymoon amid a shower of rose petals, Victor stood beside Mary Ann, waving goodbye, her arm linked with his in a perfect picture of matrimonial unity. The moment the car disappeared from view, he disengaged himself. "I have a surprise for you," he whispered in her ear. "Something special to celebrate tonight." Mary Ann looked up at him, momentarily confused by his warm tone. "Oh, what's that?" Victor smiled, a predator's smile that didn't touch his eyes. "You'll see when we get home. It's been a long time coming." As they said their goodbyes to the remaining guests, Victor caught Lawrence watching them, a possessive glint in his eyes as they lingered on Mary Ann. Victor walked directly to him, extending his hand. "Lawrence, I can't thank you enough for everything you've done for our family." He grasped the other man's hand firmly, slipping something into his palm as they shook. "A token of my appreciation." Lawrence looked down, confused, then blanched as he recognized the platinum wedding band with its damning inscription. His eyes shot up to meet Victor's cold stare. "This isn't," he began. "We'll talk soon," Victor cut him off quietly. "Very soon." Turning back to Mary Ann, who was saying goodbye to Damon's parents, Victor felt the clarity of purpose that had guided his most successful business ventures. The chess pieces were arranged. Now, the real game would begin. The ride home was silent. The space between them in the back of the town car was charged with unspoken accusations. Mary Ann attempted small talk about the wedding, but Victor's monosyllabic responses eventually silenced her. She stared out the window, fidgeting with her clutch purse, stealing occasional glances at her husband's impassive profile. "Did you enjoy yourself today?" Victor finally asked as they turned onto their street, his voice deceptively casual. "Of course," Mary Ann replied too quickly. "It was beautiful. Everything Zoe dreamed of." Victor nodded thoughtfully. "And Lawrence did an exceptional job coordinating, wouldn't you say?" The slight stiffening of her shoulders was almost imperceptible. Almost. Yes, he was very helpful. The Wilsons are lucky to have him in the family. Victor smiled thinly. Indeed. Such dedication. The car pulled into their circular driveway. Victor thanked their driver and helped Marianne out, steadying her as her heel caught in the gravel. "Careful, dear," he murmured, his hand firm on her elbow. "Wouldn't want you to fall." Inside, the house was quiet. The staff were dismissed for the night. Victor loosened his tie as Marianne kicked off her heels with a sigh of relief. "I'm exhausted," she announced. "I think I'll head up to bed." "Actually," Victor countered smoothly, "I thought we might have a nightcap. Celebrate our daughter's marriage properly." Marianne hesitated, then nodded. "All right. Just one, though." In his study, Victor poured 2 fingers of 30-year-old Macallan for himself and a glass of white wine for Marianne. He handed her the crystal glass, watching as she took a cautious sip. "To new beginnings," he toasted, locking eyes with her. She swallowed hard. New beginnings. Victor settled into his leather chair, gesturing for her to sit opposite him. "I've been thinking about our future, now that both kids are essentially launched." "Oh," Marianne crossed her legs, her champagne dress shimmering in the low light. "Yes, perhaps it's time for a change. Travel, maybe. I know you've always wanted to see the Cayman Islands." The wine glass trembled slightly in her hand. "The Caymans, or Mexico," Victor continued smoothly. "Beautiful beaches there, perfect for a fresh start." Marianne set her glass down carefully. "Victor, what's this about?" He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I think you know." The silence stretched between them, taut as a tripwire. "I don't," she began. "Don't," Victor cut her off, his voice hardening. "Don't insult me with lies, Marianne. Not after 28 years. Her face paled, but her chin lifted defiantly. "You checked the garage." "I did." "Who told you?" Victor shrugged. "Does it matter? The real question is how long you've been planning to leave me for Lawrence Palmer." Marianne stood abruptly, pacing to the window. "It's not what you think." "No." Victor's laugh was harsh. The fake passport, the offshore account, the hotel receipts dating back months, the replacement wedding ring. He drained his whiskey. "Seems fairly straightforward to me." She turned to face him, her expression hardening. "You don't understand." "Then enlighten me," he challenged. "Explain why my wife of nearly 3 decades is preparing to disappear with another man. Explain the secret account with $2 million, money I assume came from our joint assets. Explain why our son seems to be involved in your deception." "Leave Blake out of this," she snapped. "So he does know." Victor nodded slowly. "What did you do, Marianne?" "Promise him a reward if he helped facilitate your little rendezvous. Use our son as a lookout while you betrayed his father." "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like?" Victor's voice remained measured, controlled, even as fury bubbled beneath the surface. Marianne sank back into her chair, suddenly looking every day of her 51 years. "I was going to tell you. After the wedding." "How considerate." "Lawrence and I, it just happened. We reconnected during the wedding planning and things developed." Victor's expression remained stony. Things developed into fake passports and hidden bank accounts. She had the grace to look ashamed. That was his idea. For protection. Protection from what? Me? Victor stood now, his imposing frame towering over her. "Have I ever given you reason to fear me, Marianne, in all our years together?" "No," she admitted quietly. "But Lawrence said." "Lawrence said," Victor repeated icily. "Of course. And you believed him over your husband of 28 years. Marianne's eyes flashed. "Maybe because he actually sees me, Victor. When was the last time you were truly present? Not checking your phone. Not thinking about work. Not planning your next move. Lawrence listens. He asks about my day, my feelings, my dreams. When did you stop caring about those things?" Victor absorbed the verbal blow without flinching. "And that justifies deceit. Betrayal. Using our daughter's wedding as cover for your escape plan." The money isn't stolen, she protested. It's from my inheritance when my mother died. I never combined it with our accounts. A technicality, Victor waved dismissively. And Blake's involvement. Mary Ann's shoulders slumped. He found out accidentally. Saw texts on my phone. He was angry, threatened to tell you, but I convinced him to keep quiet until after Zoe's wedding. For her sake. How selfless of you both. Victor's sarcasm cut like a blade. What are you going to do? Mary Ann finally asked, her voice small. Victor studied her. This woman he'd loved for so long. Now a stranger sitting in his house, wearing his diamonds and plotting his abandonment. In that moment, his course crystallized. Nothing, he said simply. Confusion flashed across her face. Nothing. You want Lawrence. Go to him. Victor shrugged, returning to pour himself another whiskey. I won't contest the divorce. Take your inheritance. Take whatever personal items you want. I'll have the papers drawn up tomorrow. Mary Ann stared at him, clearly thrown by his calm acceptance. Just like that. You're not going to fight. What would be the point? He swirled the amber liquid in his glass. You've made your choice. I respect your decision. She stood slowly, suspicion and relief warring on her face. I don't understand. There's nothing to understand. We've grown apart. These things happen. Victor offered a small, sad smile. I only want your happiness, Mary Ann. I always have. Tears welled in her eyes. I never meant to hurt you. I know. He nodded toward the door. It's late. Get some rest. We can discuss logistics tomorrow. After she left, Victor sat alone in his study for a long time, his outward composure belying the ice-cold rage hardening within him. He pulled out his phone and sent a text to Russell. Begin Phase 1. The response came immediately. Surveillance active on all targets, awaiting further instructions. Victor stood and walked to the window, looking out over the manicured grounds of the estate he'd built for a family that had just imploded. His reflection stared back at him, eyes glittering with resolve. They thought they knew him. Mary Ann, Lawrence, even Blake. They thought he would rage, threaten, beg, or crumble. But Victor had always played the long game. And now it was time for the endgame to begin. They had miscalculated severely. Victor Lockhart didn't fight battles in the open where everyone could see his moves. He orchestrated silent campaigns where his opponents never saw him coming until it was far too late. His phone buzzed with an incoming message from the unknown number that had alerted him to check the garage. What's your next move, Mr. Lockhart? Victor typed back. Who is this? The reply came quickly. An interested party, someone who wants to see justice served. Victor considered this, then responded, Why help me? Let's just say I have my own score to settle with Lawrence Palmer. Perhaps we can help each other. A slow, dangerous smile spread across Victor's face as he typed. I'm listening. At precisely 7 a.m., Victor's private line rang. Good morning, Mr. Lockhart. We haven't formally met. My name is Vanessa Reeves. The voice was cultured, confident, a woman accustomed to authority. The mysterious texter, Victor replied, setting down his coffee. To what do I owe the pleasure of an actual conversation, Ms. Reeves? I believe we share a common enemy, and time is of the essence. Lawrence and your wife plan to leave the country in 3 days. Bermuda first, then the Caymans. Victor's grip tightened on the phone. And you know this how? Because I was supposed to be in your wife's position, until Lawrence found a more advantageous target. Interest peaked. Victor leaned back in his chair. Go on. I met Lawrence 5 years ago. We were engaged within a year, planning our life together. Then he met your wife at a charity function, discovered her separate inheritance, and suddenly our relationship had communication issues. He ended things 3 months later. That's unfortunate, but hardly. I'm not finished, Vanessa cut in sharply. I hired a private investigator after Lawrence left. Discovered I wasn't the first. He's done this before, 3 times that I could trace. Targets wealthy, usually married women, cultivates relationships over months or years, convinces them to liquidate assets, then disappears with everything. Victor processed this information, mentally fitting it into what he already knew. You have proof. Enough to be convinced, not enough for authorities to act. Lawrence is careful, uses different identities, operates across jurisdictions. By the time victims realize what's happened, the trail's cold. And you waited until my daughter's wedding day to share this information. Victor's voice held a dangerous edge. I only confirmed Lawrence's plan when I accessed his calendar and saw the travel bookings. I didn't know until recently that your wife was his latest mark. I'm sorry about the timing. Victor's mind raced through implications, possibilities, advantages. What exactly do you want from me, Ms. Reeves? Justice. Retribution. Call it what you will. Her voice hardened. Lawrence took 2 years of my life, and nearly $1 million in investments for our future. I want him stopped, permanently. By permanently, you mean? I leave the methods to you, Mr. Lockhart. I know your reputation. You didn't build your empire by showing mercy to those who crossed you. Victor allowed himself a thin smile. You've done your own work. Lawrence has never targeted someone with your resources or skill set. It's an opportunity one couldn't ignore. And what do you bring to this partnership besides information? Access, documentation, and something I think you'll find particularly valuable, Lawrence's real identity. That caught Victor's attention. Go on. His real name is Lawrence Petrov, Russian-born, emigrated as a teenager, has connections to organized crime in Brighton Beach. His entire Lawrence Palmer persona is carefully constructed. Interesting. Victor tapped his fingers on his desk. Ms. Reeves, I think we should meet today. I thought you might say that. There's a private room reserved at the Cardinal downtown. Noon. Come alone. The line went dead. Victor immediately called Russell, instructing him to compile everything on Vanessa Reeves and Lawrence Petrov. Then he messaged Neil to clear his schedule. Upstairs, he could hear Mary Ann moving around, packing presumably. He'd meant what he said about not contesting the divorce. That would be far too public, too messy. Victor preferred surgical precision in all things, especially when it came to revenge. At 11:45, Victor arrived at the Cardinal, an exclusive members club in the financial district. The concierge led him to a private dining room, where a striking woman in her mid-40s waited. Vanessa Reeves had the poised elegance of old money. Chestnut hair in a sleek bob, minimal jewelry, and a tailored navy suit that whispered rather than shouted its expense. Mr. Lockhart. She extended her hand. Thank you for coming. Ms. Reeves. Victor shook it firmly. I believe you have information for me. She gestured to the chair opposite her. Straight to business. I appreciate that. Once they were seated with drinks, sparkling water for him, gin and tonic for her, Vanessa opened a slim portfolio. Lawrence Petrov, born Lavrenti Petrov in St. Petersburg, 1970, came to the U.S. in 1987 with his mother after his father's death. Graduated NYU, worked at various financial firms, always leaving just ahead of compliance investigations. Started his relationship consultant business in 2010. Basically a high-end matchmaking service that gave him access to wealthy, often vulnerable women. She slid documents across the table. Immigration records, old newspaper clippings, financial reports. Victor examined them carefully. His pattern is consistent, Vanessa continued. He integrates himself into affluent social circles, identifies potential targets, usually women with significant assets separate from their husbands, and begins a long-game seduction. He's patient, sometimes waiting years for the right moment. And my wife. He met her through the Wilson family 3 years ago. Initially, she was just a networking contact. That changed when she mentioned her mother's estate during a fundraiser last year. Victor nodded slowly. Mary Ann had inherited nearly $3 million when her mother died. Money she'd kept separate from their joint finances at Victor's suggestion, ironically, to protect it from potential business liabilities. The offshore account, Victor mused. Standard procedure for Lawrence. The Caymans have banking secrecy laws that make recovery nearly impossible once the money lands there. Victor leaned back, studying Vanessa. What exactly did he take from you? Her expression tightened. Besides my dignity, investment capital for our joint venture, a wellness retreat in Belize that never existed. By the time I realized the property deeds were forgeries, he'd moved on to his next target. And the authorities classified it as a civil matter. A bad investment, not fraud. Lawrence is skilled at staying in legal gray areas. Her fingers tightened around her glass. He also had compromising material on me that made pursuing matters complicated. Victor nodded. Blackmail. Another tool in the con man's arsenal. Why didn't you warn my wife? I tried, indirectly. Anonymous notes, messages. She blocked my number. Vanessa's smile was bitter. Lawrence is very good at isolating his targets, making them distrust outside warnings. For the next hour, they dissected Lawrence's methods, his vulnerabilities, his likely escape routes. Victor found Vanessa's intelligence and strategic thinking impressive. She had compiled substantial research on her former fiancé. There's one more thing, Vanessa said as their meeting concluded. Lawrence has a partner, someone who handles logistics, creates documentation, moves money. He never revealed who, but it's someone with technical skills and inside access to financial systems. A name would be helpful, Victor remarked dryly. I don't have one, but whoever it is, they're essential to his operation. She closed her portfolio. So, Mr. Lockhart, now that you know what you're dealing with, what's your plan? Victor smiled slightly. I believe in appropriate responses, Ms. Reeves. Lawrence tried to take my wife, my money, and my dignity. I intend to take everything from him, including his freedom. Freedom is just the beginning. Victor stood, buttoning his suit jacket. He'll lose his reputation, his money, his future, and yes, his freedom. When I'm finished, Lawrence Petrov will cease to exist in any meaningful way. Vanessa studied him for a moment, then nodded. I believe you'll succeed where I failed. She offered her hand again. Keep me informed. I've waited a long time for this moment. You'll know when it's done, Victor promised, shaking her hand. And Ms. Reeves, thank you for the message yesterday. It was enlightening. Back in his car, Victor called Russell. I need everything on Lawrence Petrov, formerly of St. Petersburg. Focus on Brighton Beach connections, financial irregularities, and identify his technical partner. Also locate my son. We need to talk. Victor ended the call, feeling the pieces of his plan falling into place. Next, he called his attorney, Simon Weiss, a brilliant legal mind with flexible ethics. Simon, I need offshore asset recovery options, Cayman Islands, and prepared divorce papers. Straightforward, equitable split. No contest. Simon asked carefully, is there trouble at home? Let's call it a strategic reorganization, Victor replied, ending the call as his car pulled up to his building downtown. In his office, Victor unlocked a hidden safe behind a landscape painting and removed a small black ledger. His insurance policy containing information on powerful individuals accumulated over decades in the security business. He'd never used it for leverage before, considering it a last resort. But now, as he flipped through names and notations, he felt no hesitation. His executive assistant knocked softly. Sir, your son is here. Send him in. Blake entered, tension evident in his stiff posture. Dad, you wanted to see me. Sit down, Blake. Victor gestured to the chair across from his desk. Let's talk about Lawrence Palmer, or should I say Petrov. Blake's face drained of color. How did you know? That you've been helping him access our family's finances. That you introduced him to your mother's investment manager. That you've been lying to my face for months. Victor's voice remained eerily calm. I know everything, son. Blake slumped in the chair. Dad, I can explain. Please do. Victor leaned back, steepling his fingers. I'm particularly interested in what could possibly justify betraying your own father." And as Blake began his halting explanation, Victor's revenge plan crystallized into perfect, terrible clarity. "He said he was in love with her," Blake stammered, unable to meet his father's gaze. "Said you were controlling, that Mom was unhappy. Lawrence told me he could help her start over, be free." Victor observed his son dispassionately. "And you believed him?" "I just wanted Mom to be happy," Blake protested. "You're never home. Always working. Lawrence listened to her, to me, made us feel important. Important enough to steal from your family, to help a con man target your mother." Blake's head snapped up. "What are you talking about? Lawrence is an investment banker. Lawrence Petrov is a professional fraudster," Victor cut in coldly, sliding Vanessa's dossier across the desk. "He's done this before, multiple times. Seduces wealthy women, convinces them to liquidate assets, then disappears with the money." Blake flipped through the documents, face paling further. "This can't be right." "It is. Your mother isn't his lover. She's his mark. And you, son, have been his unwitting accomplice." The realization hit Blake like a physical blow. He clutched the edge of the desk, horrified. "Dad, I swear I didn't know." "Of course you didn't." Victor's tone softened slightly. "You were manipulated by an expert, but that doesn't absolve your betrayal." "What are you going to do?" Blake asked, voice barely audible. Victor regarded his son thoughtfully. "That depends on you. Are you willing to make amends?" "Anything," Blake said immediately. "Just tell me how." "You're going to help me destroy Lawrence Petrov." Victor leaned forward. "But first, I need to know everything. Every conversation, every document you provided, every account you helped him access." For the next hour, Blake detailed his involvement. How Lawrence had befriended him months before approaching Marianne, positioning himself as a mentor figure. How he gradually normalized sharing sensitive family information under the guise of helping his mother. How he facilitated meetings, made introductions to financial advisors, even helped set up the offshore account. All the while, believing he was assisting a love match, not a calculated scam. "The technical partner," Victor mused. "Lawrence mentioned someone who handles his digital footprint." Blake nodded reluctantly. "A woman named Sophia. I never met her, but Lawrence called her his digital wizard. Said she could make anything happen online." "A name. Good." Victor made a note. "What about their escape plan?" "They're leaving Tuesday. Private plane to Bermuda. Then a yacht to the Caymans." Blake swallowed hard. "I was supposed to handle the final wire transfer that morning." Victor smiled thinly. "And you still will, but the destination will be changing." "Dad, I'm so sorry." "Save it." Victor raised a hand. "You can apologize by doing exactly as I say from now on. First, you'll contact Lawrence. Tell him you're worried. I'm suspicious that the timeline needs to accelerate. Suggest Monday instead of Tuesday. He won't change the flight. He will if you tell him I've scheduled an emergency audit of your mother's accounts for Tuesday morning." Blake nodded slowly. "What else?" "Act normal with your mother. Don't give any indication we've spoken. As far as she knows, I've accepted the divorce and am moving on." "And have you accepted it?" Victor's expression hardened. "The divorce is irrelevant. The betrayal is unforgivable. From both of you." Blake flinched at the finality in his father's tone. "Go home. Contact Lawrence. Report back with his response." Victor turned to his computer, a clear dismissal. Blake stood to leave, then hesitated. "Dad, what about Mom? If Lawrence is just using her?" "She made her choice," Victor replied without looking up. "Now she'll live with the consequences." After Blake left, Victor activated his secure line to Russell. "I need digital forensics on a Sophia, no last name. Associate of Lawrence Petrov. Expert in financial systems, possibly identity creation." "Anything else?" Russell asked. "Yes, I want Lawrence Petrov's entire digital life mapped. Every account, every transaction, every communication, and prepare the lake house. We'll need it on Monday. The lake house was a remote property Victor maintained off the books, officially a corporate retreat, unofficially a secure location for sensitive negotiations, or in extreme cases, interrogations. Russell, understanding the implications, simply responded, "Will do." Victor sat back, knowing every move was now set in motion. Victor's next call was to Simon Weiss. "Simon, change of plans. Hold the divorce papers. Instead, I need documents for an asset protection trust. Cayman Islands. Ironclad. Move before any divorce filing." "That's aggressive, Victor," Simon cautioned. "A judge could view it as concealment." "That's exactly what I want Lawrence to think. Make it discoverable. Obvious enough that a financial search would find it. Hidden enough to seem like I'm trying to conceal assets from Marianne." "Bait," Simon realized. "You're setting a trap. Just have it ready by morning." And Simon, this conversation never happened. The final piece fell into place that evening when Russell sent a secure file to Victor's private server. Sofia Petrov, Lawrence's younger sister, not mentioned in his immigration records, a cybersecurity specialist who'd worked for several major banks before going freelance 3 years ago, the digital brain to Lawrence's smooth-talking operation. Victor forwarded the information to Blake with instructions to mention Sofia casually to Lawrence, a subtle reminder that Victor knew more than he should. At home, Victor maintained his facade of resigned acceptance. He and Mary Ann moved like ghosts around each other, the practiced politeness of strangers sharing temporary quarters. She'd been surprised by his calm demeanor, clearly expecting rage or desperate pleas. Her confusion grew when Victor mentioned he'd be away for a few days on business. "Making your exit easier," he explained magnanimously. That night, Victor sat in his study, methodically mapping out each step of his plan on a secure tablet. Every contingency, every potential complication, every required resource. When complete, he encrypted the file and sent it to Russell with the subject line, "Scorched Earth." The response came minutes later. "Assets in position. Ready when you are." Victor poured himself a final whiskey, considering the pieces arranged on his mental chessboard. Lawrence and Marianne, planning their escape. Blake, the reluctant double agent. Sofia, the hidden accomplice. Vanessa, the vengeful ally. All moving according to his design, unaware of their predetermined roles in the destruction he'd orchestrated. His phone chimed with a text from Blake. Plan changed to Monday, as suggested. All nervous, but agreed. Meeting him tomorrow for final arrangements. Victor smiled into his whiskey. The first domino was falling. By this time next week, Lawrence Petrov would understand the fatal error in targeting Victor Lockhart's family. Not through threats or violence. Those were tools of lesser men. But through the complete, methodical dismantling of his life, piece by carefully extracted piece. The game was afoot, and Victor never lost. Monday dawned bright and clear, nature's indifference to human drama on full display. Victor had barely slept. The culmination of 3 days' meticulous planning was about to unfold. Every detail had been arranged, and nothing would be left to chance. Every contingency addressed, every player's position precise. His phone buzzed at exactly 6 a.m. Blake's confirmation. L&M meeting at Four Seasons. 10 a.m. final preparations before 2 p.m. flight. Lawrence had booked the same room he'd used for his secret meetings with Marianne, a detail Victor found both predictable and useful. Victor texted back, "Remember your part. No deviations." Since their confrontation in Victor's office, Blake had proven surprisingly competent, following Victor's instructions to the letter. The boy had skills, a fact Victor might have appreciated under different circumstances. Now it was merely another tool in his arsenal. Marianne hadn't come home the previous night, choosing to stay at a hotel. She texted to make things easier. Victor had responded with understanding and wishes for her comfort. His apparent graciousness unsettled her more than anger ever could. At 7:30, Victor's secure phone rang, Russell with final confirmation. "Everything's in place. Financial triggers set. Digital footprint established. Surveillance active on all targets. And our friends? Victor asked. In position. Eager to assist. These friends represented Victor's most significant gambit. Federal agents from financial crimes and counterterrorism, cultivated over years as clients and contacts. Not officially involved, of course. This would be a courtesy notification of suspicious activities delivered through back channels. The authorities wouldn't move until Victor gave the signal, but when they did, they'd have everything they needed. Excellent. Maintain distance until my mark. At precisely 8:45 a.m., Victor left his home, dressed impeccably in a charcoal suit that projected both authority and discretion. His driver took him not to his office, but to the Cardinal, where Vanessa Reeves waited in the same private room as before. It's happening today, he informed her without preamble. Are you prepared for your role? Vanessa nodded, elegant in a burgundy dress that suggested business rather than vengeance. The documents are ready. My statement is prepared. Once this begins, there's no stopping it, Victor cautioned. Lawrence will know you're involved. Her smile was cold. I'm counting on it. Victor studied her. This isn't just about money for you, is it? Is it for you? She countered. We both know this passed beyond financial concerns the moment they betrayed us. He acknowledged this with a slight nod. 10 minutes after I leave, make the call, exactly as we discussed. And Blake, she asked. What happens to him? Victor's expression remained impassive. My son made his choice. Now he faces the consequences. At 9:30, Victor took up position in a suite he booked at the Four Seasons, directly above the room where Lawrence and Mary Ann would soon meet. Russell's team had already installed surveillance, giving Victor both audio and visual access to everything that would transpire below. At 9:55, Lawrence arrived, impeccably dressed in a tailored Italian suit, carrying a briefcase. The cameras captured his confident stride, his practiced charm as he greeted the staff. A man without concern, without awareness that his carefully constructed world was about to implode. At 10:02, Mary Ann entered, looking nervous but determined in a simple black dress, pulling a small suitcase. Lawrence embraced her, whispering reassurances in her ear. Victor watched dispassionately as the man kissed his wife with familiar ease. Is everything set? Mary Ann asked, her voice clear through the surveillance feed. Almost, Lawrence replied. Blake is handling the final transfer. Our new documentation is ready. By tonight, we'll be beyond his reach. Victor suspects nothing, Mary Ann confirmed. He's been disturbingly accommodating. It's almost disappointing. Lawrence laughed. The mighty Victor Lockhart, security expert, blindsided in his own home. Did you get the documents I asked for? Mary Ann produced a flash drive from her purse. Everything. Client lists, security protocols, access codes. Are you sure you need these? Insurance, my love. Your husband has powerful friends. Victor watched as Lawrence pocketed the drive containing proprietary information from his company. Corporate espionage atop everything else. He made a note to add this to the growing list of charges. At 10:15, Blake arrived, right on schedule. He entered the room with visible nervousness, carrying his own laptop. Did you do it? Lawrence demanded immediately. Yes, Blake confirmed. The funds are moving now. $3 million from Mom's account to the transit account in Bermuda, then to the Cayman Shell Corporation. Lawrence checked his phone, nodding with satisfaction. Perfect. You've done well, Blake. Mary Ann embraced her son. Thank you, sweetheart. I know this hasn't been easy. There's something else, Blake said, following Victor's script perfectly. I think Dad knows more than he's letting on. I heard him mention Sophia on the phone yesterday. Lawrence froze. Sophia? You're sure? Positive. And something about Brighton Beach. Lawrence began pacing. He knows. We need to accelerate. Blake, call the pilot. Tell him we're moving up to noon. Already done, Blake assured him. But Dad set up a Cayman trust of his own. I found the paperwork this morning. He's hiding assets before the divorce filing. This fabricated detail, the false trust Victor had Simon create, had its intended effect. Lawrence's expression shifted from concern to predatory interest. How much? At least 10 million. Maybe more. Lawrence turned to Marianne. Can you access it? She hesitated. Possibly. I still have his passwords. Do it, Lawrence urged. Consider it compensation for decades of being undervalued. Victor allowed himself a cold smile as Marianne logged into their joint financial portal using Blake's laptop. She was playing directly into his hands. At 10:30, right on cue, a hotel staff member knocked on their door. Mr. Palmer, there's an urgent call for you at the front desk. They say it's your sister. Lawrence stiffened, masking his sudden anxiety with a practiced smile. Excuse me, I'll be right back, he said, striding out with quick purpose. Lawrence tensed visibly. I'll be right there, he said to Marianne and Blake. Continue with the transfers. I'll be back in 5 minutes. The moment Lawrence left, Blake turned to his mother, genuine anguish on his face. Mom, there's something I need to tell you. Not now, Blake, she interrupted, focused on the laptop. We need to finish this before your father realizes what's happening. But Mom, Lawrence isn't who you think. I said not now, Marianne snapped. I've made my decision. Blake fell silent, watching as his mother initiated transfers from accounts she wasn't authorized to access, exactly as Victor had anticipated. Every keystroke, every transaction attempt was being logged, creating an irrefutable record of attempted fraud. Meanwhile, at the front desk, Lawrence discovered there was no call, another piece of Victor's choreography. As he turned to return to the room, he found himself face to face with Vanessa Reeves. Hello, Lawrence, she said calmly. Or should I say, Lavrandi. The color drained from his face. Vanessa, what are you doing here? Watching justice unfold. She smiled thinly. Did you really think I wouldn't find you eventually? Lawrence recovered quickly, his charm sliding back into place. This is a misunderstanding. We should talk privately. Oh, we're well past talking. Vanessa glanced at her watch. In fact, we're right on schedule. Lawrence's phone buzzed urgently. He checked it, his face hardening as he read a text from Sophia. Emergency. Accounts frozen. Transfers reversed. Get out now. Without another word to Vanessa, he sprinted back toward the elevators. When he reached the 8th floor, he found 2 men in suits waiting outside his room door. In the surveillance suite, Victor watched the scenario unfold exactly as planned. The businessmen were Russell's security team, not federal agents. That would come later. Their job was simply to delay Lawrence, to increase his panic. Lawrence retreated to the stairwell, pulling out his phone to warn Marianne. But the hotel's signal jammer, another of Victor's arrangements, had activated, cutting off all communications from that floor. Inside the room, Marianne was growing frustrated. Something's wrong. The transfers keep failing. Mom, Blake tried again. You need to stop. This isn't right. Don't lecture me about right and wrong, she snapped. I've sacrificed everything for this family. Now it's my turn. By stealing from Dad. By running away with a con man. She looked up sharply. What are you talking about? Lawrence. He's done this before. Multiple times. He's using you, Mom, for your money. That's ridiculous. Lawrence loves me. Like he loved Vanessa Reeves. And the others before her. Marianne went still. What others? Who is Vanessa Reeves? His previous target. Before you. Blake pulled out the dossier Victor had provided, placing it before her. It's all here. His real name is Lawrence Petrov. He's a professional fraudster. And I helped him target you. As Marianne began reading, her face cycled through disbelief, shock, and dawning horror. Victor finally made his move. He left the surveillance suite and took the elevator down, timing his arrival perfectly. Lawrence, having found another route back to the room, burst in just as Mary Ann looked up from the dossier, tears streaming down her face. "We need to go." "Now," Lawrence commanded, grabbing her arm. "There's been a complication." "Let go of me," Mary Ann said quietly, pulling away. "Is it true? Is your real name Petrov? Have there been others?" Lawrence shot a venomous look at Blake. "What have you done?" "Told her the truth," Blake replied, standing his ground. "Something I should have done months ago." "Lawrence," Mary Ann pressed, "answer me. Is it true?" Before he could respond, the door opened again and Victor stepped in, the picture of calm authority in his perfectly tailored suit. "I believe the term is confidence man," Victor said conversationally. "Though in my opinion, it gives you too much credit, Petrov. A truly confident man wouldn't need to prey on women." Lawrence's hand moved toward his jacket, but Victor was faster. "I wouldn't. My men outside wouldn't appreciate it." The tableau held for a breathless moment. Victor by the door, Lawrence beside Mary Ann, Blake standing protectively near his mother. "How long have you known?" Lawrence finally asked. "Long enough to ensure everything you've built comes crashing down." Victor smiled thinly. "Your offshore accounts have been frozen. Your identity as Lawrence Palmer has been flagged in every financial system that matters. Your sister Sophia is currently being questioned by federal agents about her role in your various schemes." Lawrence's composure finally cracked. "You can't prove anything." "Actually, I can." Victor nodded toward the laptop. "Every fraudulent transfer attempt has been locked. Every communication between you and my wife has been archived. Every false document you created leaves a trail, but the crowning touch." He pulled out his phone, showing a video playing on screen. "Your full confession, recorded in this very room, discussing how you've done this before." Victor turned to Mary Ann, his expression hardening. "You chose poorly, my dear, not just in your lover, but in believing I would ever let anyone take what's mine without consequences." Mary Ann looked broken, her carefully constructed future dissolving before her eyes. "Victor, I didn't know." "Save it," Victor cut her off. "Blake, come here." His son moved to his side, head bowed. "You redeemed yourself somewhat today," Victor told him quietly. "But trust, once broken, is not easily restored." Blake nodded, understanding the weight of his father's words. To Lawrence, Victor said simply, "You have a choice. Surrender to the federal agents waiting downstairs for my signal, or face what I have planned for you personally. Choose quickly." Lawrence's eyes darted around, calculating, still searching for escape. "This isn't over, Lockhart." Victor's gaze was unyielding. "For you, it most certainly is. It was over the moment you targeted my family." Victor checked his watch. "Your time's up. Which will it be?" Before Lawrence could answer, hotel security knocked on the door. "Mr. Palmer, there are federal agents here asking for you." Lawrence's shoulders slumped in defeat. As the agents entered and began reading him his rights, Victor watched dispassionately. The man's life was effectively over. His assets seized, his identity compromised, his freedom forfeit. The charges would include wire fraud, identity theft, conspiracy, and thanks to the flash drive in his pocket, corporate espionage. Mary Ann stood frozen, watching her future collapse in real time. "Victor," she whispered, "what happens now?" Victor regarded his wife of 28 years, this woman he'd once loved, who had betrayed him so completely. His voice, when he finally spoke, was devoid of emotion. "Now you live with your choices, Mary Ann, just as I'll live with mine." As Lawrence was led away in handcuffs, Victor turned and walked out, leaving Mary Ann and Blake to face the wreckage of what they'd helped create. The first phase of his vengeance was complete, but Victor was far from finished. 3 weeks after Lawrence's arrest, Victor sat in his home office, reviewing reports. The case against Lawrence Petrov had expanded dramatically as federal investigators uncovered previous victims and schemes dating back a decade. His sister Sophia had turned state's witness, providing evidence in exchange for leniency. The offshore accounts had been frozen. the money recovered and held as evidence. But Victor's personal vengeance extended far beyond the legal system. Through his extensive network, he'd ensured Lawrence's reputation was systematically destroyed in every circle that mattered. Anonymous tips to financial journalists had resulted in exposes detailing his fraudulent history. Former victims, emboldened by his arrest, came forward with their stories. The prestigious Wilson family, mortified by their unwitting role in introducing a criminal into their circle, publicly denounced him. Lawrence Petrov was ruined, completely, financially, legally, socially, and he would remain in federal custody for decades, facing charges across multiple jurisdictions. A satisfying outcome, but only the beginning. Victor's private line rang. It was Simon Weiss. "The divorce papers are ready. Standard terms as requested. Mary Ann gets the lake house, her personal accounts, and a settlement that's generous, but not excessive. And the other documents. Also prepared. Are you certain you want to proceed this way, Victor? It's unusually punitive." "Absolutely certain." Victor's voice left no room for argument. "Have the messenger go to the Addison Hotel, room 542. That's where she's staying." After ending the call, Victor reviewed the terms one more time. While the divorce agreement appeared reasonable on the surface, the accompanying documents told a different story. Victor had systematically removed Mary Ann from every aspect of the life they'd built together. He revoked her positions on charitable boards, canceled her social club memberships, and withdrew her access to their shared vacation properties. He'd even contacted their extended social circle, ensuring she would be quietly, but firmly, excluded from future events. It wasn't illegal. It wasn't even particularly vindictive in the traditional sense. It was simply the excision of a tumor from his life. Clinical, complete, and without remorse. His phone buzzed with a text from Blake. "Can we talk? Please." Victor had maintained minimal contact with his son since the Four Seasons confrontation. Blake had moved in with friends, completing his final semester of business school remotely. Victor had not cut him off financially. That would be counterproductive to his long-term plans. But he made it clear that trust had been irrevocably damaged. "My office, 3 p.m. tomorrow," Victor replied, then set his phone aside. The doorbell rang. Victor checked the security camera to see Vanessa Reeves waiting outside, elegant as always in a tailored pantsuit. He buzzed her in. "I hope I'm not intruding," she said as she entered his study. "I wanted to deliver this in person." She handed him a thick envelope. Inside was a formal statement she'd submitted to the prosecutors, detailing her history with Lawrence and the evidence she'd gathered independently. "They've added 3 more counts based on your testimony," Victor noted, scanning the document. "Small satisfaction, but I'll take it." She sat across from him. "I also wanted to thank you. Your approach was more effective than I could have imagined." Victor inclined his head slightly. "We had compatible goals." "And your wife, if you don't mind my asking?" "Ex-wife, soon enough." Victor's expression remained impassive. Mary Ann made her choice. Vanessa studied him thoughtfully. "You know, when I first researched you for this collaboration, I expected a different kind of man. Your business reputation suggests someone more emotional, impulsive, human," she finished. "You've orchestrated Lawrence's destruction with remarkable precision. Not a wasted motion. Not a hint of personal feeling. It's almost," she hesitated. "Mechanical," Victor supplied. "Terrifying," she corrected. "Admirable, but terrifying." Victor smiled slightly. A necessary approach when dealing with betrayal. Emotion clouds judgment. "And what about forgiveness?" Vanessa asked, watching him carefully. "Your son seems genuinely remorseful. Forgiveness is a luxury I don't indulge in." Victor placed the envelope on his desk. "Blake made a choice to betray his family. He'll carry that consequence forever, regardless of what relationship we salvage. And Mary Ann, there is nothing to salvage there." Vanessa nodded slowly. "Well, my part in this drama is complete. Lawrence will never hurt another woman, thanks largely to you. She stood, extending her hand. It's been educational, Mr. Lockhart. Victor rose and shook her hand, appreciating the sense of closure and finality in the gesture. Victor shook her hand. Indeed, Ms. Reeves. Perhaps our paths will cross again under more favorable circumstances. After she left, Victor returned to his desk, opening a secure file on his computer. Operation Scorched Earth wasn't quite complete. Lawrence Petrov's destruction was assured. Mary Ann's excision from his life nearly finalized. But there remained one loose end, ensuring neither could ever recover from the damage he'd inflicted. The following afternoon, Blake arrived precisely at 3 p.m., looking haggard but composed. Victor gestured to the chair across from his desk. You wanted to talk. Talk. Blake straightened his shoulders. I've been offered a position at Meridian Capital, junior analyst. I wanted to make sure you wouldn't have objections. Meridian Capital was a direct competitor to one of Victor's major clients. An interesting choice, one that suggested Blake was trying to establish independence. Why would I object? Your career is your business now. Victor's tone was neutral, revealing nothing. Because you know everyone in finance in this city. One word from you could sink this before it starts. Is that what you think of me? That I'd sabotage your career out of spite? Blake met his father's gaze directly. I don't know what to think anymore. You've changed, Dad. Or maybe you were always this way, and I just never noticed. Interesting perspective from someone who betrayed his own father. I've apologized. I've tried to make amends. I helped you take down Lawrence. What more do you want from me? Victor leaned back, studying his son. Nothing, Blake. I don't want anything from you. That's the point. Our relationship going forward will be cordial, distant, and entirely professional. You made your choice when you sided with your mother and Lawrence. It wasn't like that. I was manipulated. You were weak. Victor cut him off coldly. You let Lawrence flatter you, make you feel important. You chose that validation over loyalty to your family. Actions have consequences. Son, this is yours. Blake's face flushed. So that's it. No possibility of redemption. Redemption is a religious concept, ideal in reality. Victor slid a folder across the desk. Your trust fund has been restructured. The terms are outlined here. You'll receive quarterly distributions that will allow you to live comfortably, but not excessively. The principal remains under my control until you reach 40. I don't care about the money. You should. It's your inheritance, your legacy. The only thing that remains of our relationship. Blake stared at his father, realization dawning. You've already written me off, haven't you? Just like Mom. Clean excision. No loose ends. Victor didn't deny it. Take the job at Meridian. Build your career. Live your life. But understand this. Trust, once broken, can never be fully restored. Not with me. And Zoe, does she know what's happened? Victor's expression tightened minutely. The first crack in his impassive facade. He paused, his steely composure faltering, just for an instant. Your sister returns from her honeymoon next week. She'll be informed appropriately. You mean you'll give her your version? Blake challenged. Make sure she sides with you. I'll tell her the truth, that her mother planned to abandon us, that her brother facilitated it, and that I handled the situation as necessary. Blake stood, gathering his dignity. You know, Dad, you've won. Lawrence is destroyed. Mom is devastated. He gestured helplessly. Whatever this is. But at what cost? You're alone now. I've always been alone, Blake. The difference is that now I don't harbor illusions about family loyalty. Victor turned to his computer, a clear dismissal. Take the Meridian job. You'll do well there. After Blake left, Victor remained motionless for several minutes. His expression was unreadable. Then he picked up his phone and made a call to Russell. Phase 3 is ready to implement. Begin tomorrow. This final phase targeted Lawrence Petrov's remaining assets, properties held under different names, investments shielded through proxies, relationships that might offer support during his incarceration. Victor had identified each one methodically, and now he would dismantle them with surgical precision. By week's end, Lawrence would have nothing and no one. His complete destruction was assured, not just for the present, but for any possible future. Anyone connecting themselves to him professionally or personally would find their own prospects mysteriously dimming. As for Marianne, her social exile had already begun. Former friends suddenly had scheduling conflicts when she reached out. Charitable organizations politely informed her that her services were no longer required. The divorce terms, while financially adequate, ensured she would never again enjoy the lifestyle and status she'd grown accustomed to. Victor had even arranged for the sale of their main residence, eliminating her last connection to their shared life. The doorbell rang again. This time, it was the courier with the signed divorce papers. Marianne had accepted the terms without contest, as Victor knew she would. Her accompanying note was brief. "I know nothing I say matters anymore, but I am sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen." Victor placed the note in his shredder without response. Words were meaningless. Only actions had consequences. That evening, as he sat alone in his study, Victor finally permitted himself a single glass of whiskey. Not in celebration. He took no joy in what he'd done. Rather, it was acknowledgement of a necessary task completed efficiently. His phone buzzed with a text from Zoe. "Landing tomorrow. So much to tell you about the honeymoon. Can't wait to see you, Dad. Love you." Victor stared at the message, feeling something crack within his carefully maintained composure. Zoe still didn't know how her family had imploded in her absence. That particular conversation loomed ahead, unavoidable. He set down his glass, suddenly weary. The vengeance he'd executed so meticulously had achieved its intended purpose. Lawrence Petrov was destroyed. Marianne was excised from his life. Blake understood his new position. The betrayal had been answered appropriately. Yet, sitting alone in the empty house, surrounded by the wreckage of what had once been a family, Victor Lockhart experienced no satisfaction, no sense of justice fulfilled. There was only the hollow certainty that he had done what was necessary, what his nature demanded. He had been betrayed, and he had responded in kind, with a ruthlessness that ensured no one would ever dare cross him again. It was not happiness. It was not even peace. It was simply the price of being Victor Lockhart, a man who never forgave, never forgot, and never showed mercy to those who betrayed him. Tomorrow, he would begin rebuilding his life, alone, but on his own terms, without illusions, without weakness, without forgiveness. 6 months after the divorce, Victor stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his new penthouse, surveying the city sprawled beneath him. The view was different from his former home, more urban, less pastoral, but change had been necessary. The estate held too many memories, too much history. His phone vibrated, a text from Russell, confirming what Victor already knew. Lawrence Petrov's final appeal had been denied. He would serve his full 20-year sentence without possibility of early parole. The systematic dismantling of his life was complete. Every hidden asset uncovered. Every potential supporter alienated. Every escape route blocked. Victor felt nothing at the news. Neither satisfaction nor disappointment. It was simply the expected outcome of a properly executed plan. His intercom buzzed. "Sir, your daughter is here. Send her up." Minutes later, Zoe entered, elegant in a simple black dress that suggested business rather than a family visit. At 27, she'd grown even more poised since her wedding, handling the family implosion with remarkable composure. While Blake had crumbled and Marianne had retreated, Zoe had adapted, compartmentalizing the crisis much as Victor himself might have done. "Dad." She kissed his cheek, her perfume, gentle, like her mother once wore, briefly triggering unwelcome memories. "You look well," Victor observed, leading her to the sitting area with its panoramic views. "How's Damon?" "Busy. The FDA approval process is consuming his life." She settled onto the leather sofa. But we're good. Really good, actually. Victor nodded, pleased at least that his daughter's marriage remained intact, despite the chaos he'd unleashed on the family, and the foundation work expanding. She smiled slightly. We've opened 2 new community health centers this quarter. I think you'd be impressed with the operational model. The Lockhart-Wilson Health Initiative had been Zoe's project since graduating medical school, a marriage of her clinical expertise and the Wilson pharmaceutical empire, with initial funding from Victor, one of the few family connections he'd maintained. I'm sure I would be impressed, Victor said, pouring her favorite green tea. What brings you by today? Our regular dinner isn't until Thursday. Zoe took the cup, her expression shifting to something more serious. Blake called me. Victor's face remained impassive. I see. He's struggling, Dad. The Meridian position isn't working out. He feels blacklisted, though he can't prove it. The financial world is competitive. Failure is common. Zoe set down her cup with deliberate care. Is that really how you're going to play this? Pretending you haven't systematically undermined every opportunity he's pursued? Victor met her gaze steadily. Blake made his choices. He was 24 and manipulated by a professional con man, the same con man who manipulated Mom. Zoe leaned forward, her voice low but firm. It's been 6 months. When does the punishment end? It's not punishment. It's consequence. It's vengeance, Dad. Calculated, relentless vengeance. Victor didn't deny it. Perhaps. Zoe studied her father, this man she'd admired and feared in equal measure throughout her life. You know, when everything first happened, I was so angry at Mom, at Blake. I understood your reaction. But this Cold War you're waging against your own son, it's not right. Right and wrong are subjective concepts. Blake betrayed me. In my world, that has permanent repercussions. Your world sounds terribly lonely. Zoe's voice softened. He's your son, your only son. Biology doesn't entitle him to my trust. What about love? Does it entitle him to your love? Victor turned to look out at the cityscape, unwilling to engage with the emotion underlying her question. What exactly are you asking me to do, Zoe? Talk to him. Really talk, not just issue pronouncements. Give him a chance to earn his way back. And your mother, will you advocate for her forgiveness too? Zoe hesitated. That's different. What Mom did was worse. She was planning to leave, to take money that wasn't hers. Blake was just a kid caught in the middle. A kid who facilitated fraud against his own father. Because he believed Mom was unhappy. Because Lawrence convinced him he was helping her escape a controlling relationship. Zoe set her cup down firmly. Don't pretend you were a perfect husband and father before all this happened. Victor raised an eyebrow. Meaning? Meaning you were an absent dad. Physically present, but emotionally unreachable. Mom spent years trying to connect with you. Blake spent his childhood seeking your approval. I was the only one who figured out how to navigate your fortress walls. And that's only because I'm so much like you. It terrifies Damon sometimes. Her candor surprised him. Zoe had never spoken to him this way before. You've given this considerable thought, he observed neutrally. Zoe nodded. I had to. I needed to understand why our family fell apart, why you are the way you are, and if it was possible not to repeat those mistakes myself. I've had 6 months to watch you destroy what's left of our family with surgical precision. Zoe said, her eyes, gray like his own, holding his gaze unflinchingly. You've got your revenge on Lawrence. He's finished. But what you're doing to Blake, to Mom, it's not justice, Dad. It's cruelty. They betrayed me, Victor stated flatly, as if this simple fact explained everything. And you've punished them for it. Thoroughly. When is it enough? When do you stop being the man who ensures everyone pays and start being the man who rebuilds something worth having? Victor turned away, uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. I didn't realize you'd become a philosopher. Don't deflect. Answer the question. What's your endgame here? Complete isolation. No family at all. The question hung between them, unanswered. Victor moved to his bar, pouring himself a whiskey, though it was barely noon. Blake could have come to me directly. Why send you as his emissary? Because he's terrified of you, Dad. Because every time he's tried to reach out, you've shut him down or used the opportunity to remind him of his failures. Zoe stood, crossing to where he stood. And he didn't send me. I came on my own because I'm tired of watching this slow-motion car crash. I miss my brother. I miss our family, dysfunctional as it was. Victor sipped his whiskey, buying time. The truth was, he had orchestrated Blake's professional struggles, using his influence to ensure doors remained closed, not to destroy the boy completely, but to ensure he understood the consequences of disloyalty. "What would you have me do?" he finally asked. "Give him a real chance. Not at Lockhart Security. I know that's too much to ask, but stop actively hindering him. Let him prove himself elsewhere. And maybe, eventually, consider actually talking to him. Like a father, not a disappointed CEO." Victor considered this, weighing options and outcomes as he would any business decision. "And in return," he asked. Zoe shook her head sadly. "There's no transaction here, Dad. No quid pro quo. I'm asking you to show mercy because it's the right thing to do, not because you get something in exchange." The concept seemed almost foreign to him after months of calculated vengeance. Mercy without advantage. Forgiveness without gain. "I'll consider it," he finally said, not committing further. Zoe accepted this small concession with a nod. "That's a start." She checked her watch. "I have to go. Board meeting at the foundation. Are we still on for dinner Thursday?" "Of course." She kissed his cheek again, then paused at the door. "You know, I understand why you did what you did to Lawrence. He deserved it. But Mom and Blake, they made mistakes. Terrible ones. Yes, but they're still family. And family should mean something, even to Victor Lockhart." After she left, Victor remained motionless, her words echoing uncomfortably. Family, as if the word itself should override betrayal, should soften consequences. His phone rang. "Simon Weiss. The Palmer estate matter is concluded. Every asset has been liquidated and directed as instructed." Victor had orchestrated Lawrence's financial destruction so thoroughly that even his legitimate holdings, properties under his Palmer identity, had been systematically dismantled. Some assets were seized by the government, others claimed by victims. The remainder was liquidated and distributed to various charities working with victims of fraud, a fitting end to a fraud's legacy. "And the other matter?" Victor asked. "Mrs. Lockhart's petition for increased support has been denied. The judge upheld the original divorce terms. Mary Ann had recently attempted to challenge the settlement, claiming she needed additional funds for medical treatments. Victor had contested immediately, providing evidence that her medical needs were actually cosmetic procedures. "Good, that concludes our business." After ending the call, Victor poured another whiskey, carrying it to the window. Below, he could see Zoe getting into her car, phone already pressed to her ear, likely calling Blake to report on their conversation. Blake, his son, his blood. For the first time in months, Victor allowed himself to remember Blake as a child. Eager, bright-eyed, desperate for his father's approval. Always trying to measure up to Victor's impossible standards. Always falling just short in ways that now seemed trivial. Had Zoe been right? Had he been so emotionally unavailable that his son became vulnerable to Lawrence's manipulations? Had his single-minded focus on success created the very weakness Lawrence exploited? Victor dismissed the thought immediately. Self-doubt was unproductive. Blake had made a choice, the wrong choice, and consequences followed. That was the natural order. And yet, his phone vibrated with an incoming email from Russell, the weekly surveillance report on Mary Ann. She'd moved to a small apartment downtown, taken a part-time job at an art gallery, started attending therapy twice weekly. Her social circle had contracted to almost nothing. Her financial circumstances were greatly reduced. Victor had orchestrated her diminishment with precision, ensuring she would never again enjoy the life she'd had with him. But looking at the attached photos, Mary Ann looking thin, tired, years older than her age, Victor felt an unexpected twinge. Not guilt, certainly. Not regret. But perhaps enough. He closed the file, making the decision. Opening his secure messaging app, he typed instructions to Russell. Terminate surveillance on M. No further reports required. It was a small step. Not forgiveness, never that. But perhaps the beginning of what Zoe had suggested, an easing into inactive vengeance. As for Blake, Victor opened his contacts, hovering over his son's name. The boy had paid substantially for his transgression. Perhaps it was time for a different approach. Not restoration of trust, that remained impossible, but a cessation of hostilities. For the first time in a long while, Victor considered what it might mean to extend an olive branch, even if only for his daughter's sake. Before he could reconsider, Victor typed a brief message. Dinner. Tomorrow. 8 p.m. Morton's. 3 words. Not warm. Not particularly paternal. But an opening nonetheless. The response came almost immediately, revealing that Blake had been keeping his phone close, hoping for just such a message. I'll be there. Thank you, Dad. Victor didn't reply further. This wasn't reconciliation. He remained incapable of that level of forgiveness. But it was an adjustment. A recalibration of his response to betrayal. Not because Blake deserved it, but because Zoe had asked. Because some connections, it seemed, could not be severed completely, even by his ruthless precision. As evening fell over the city, Victor Lockhart stood alone in his penthouse, the lights of the skyline reflecting off his impassive features. He had destroyed Lawrence Petrov completely. He had excised Mary Ann from his life effectively. He had punished Blake appropriately. Justice, by his definition, had been served. And now, perhaps, it was time to determine what remained in the aftermath. What could be built from the ashes of betrayal? Not forgiveness, never that. But perhaps, eventually, a new equilibrium. A carefully controlled relationship with his son. A civil detente with his ex-wife. Not because they deserved it, but because Victor Lockhart decided it served his purposes better than continued vengeance. It wasn't mercy. It wasn't weakness. It was simply the next strategic move in the chess game that was his life, a game he played alone, according to his own unforgiving rules, where victory was measured not in happiness, but in the precise execution of one's will. Victor Lockhart had been betrayed, and he had responded as his nature demanded, with ruthless, methodical destruction. That would never change. He would never forgive. Never forget. Never show mercy to those who crossed him. But perhaps, as Zoe suggested, he could decide when enough was enough. When the lesson had been sufficiently taught. When justice had been adequately served. Not forgiveness, but finality. He raised his glass to his reflection in the window. A solitary toast to the man he was, and would always be, unforgiving, unyielding, alone by choice rather than circumstance. Victor Lockhart. A man of iron will, and ashes where his heart should be. That, he determined, was victory enough.